You spend your whole life building something. Decades of birthdays, Christmases, sickness, struggles, vacations, shared bank accounts, inside jokes, tears, laughter, children, mortgages, and memories. And then, suddenly, in your 60s or 70s, it falls apart. One day you're sharing a bowl of cereal in silence. The next you're in a lawyer's office signing divorce papers. What happened? How can two people who've spent most of their adult lives together just walk away from a marriage that's lasted 30, 40, even 50 years? It's a question more and more people are asking, and it's one we can't ignore anymore. If you're over 60, or know someone who is, you may have seen it happening all around you. Maybe you're in it yourself. The truth is, what used to be called growing old together is being replaced by a new phrase: gray divorce. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the divorce rate for people over 65 has tripled in the past 30 years. Tripled. And these aren't impulsive young couples separating after a few months. These are long-term marriages ending after decades. So why is this happening? Why are so many long marriages falling apart after 60? One reason is that retirement doesn't always bring people closer. It can actually pull them apart. When you're working, raising kids, and living in the busyness of everyday life, there's not much time to notice how disconnected you become. But once the kids leave and the careers end, couples are suddenly left alone with each other, often for the first time in years, and they realize they've changed. Sometimes the person you married at 25 isn't the person you're living with at 65. You're different now. You want different things, and that can be a shock. A woman named Sharon from Ohio shared in a recent AARP interview that after she and her husband both retired, they realized they had nothing in common anymore. We raised the kids, built a life, worked hard, but when it was just the two of us, we had nothing to talk about. We felt like strangers, she said. And it's not uncommon. Experts call it the post-retirement identity crisis. People begin asking themselves, who am I now? What do I want out of the years I have left? And sometimes the honest answer is, not this. Not this marriage. Not this routine. For some, it's about freedom. They've spent their lives doing what was expected, providing, caregiving, compromising, and they finally reach a point where they want to live for themselves. And that's not selfish. It's human. The problem is when one partner wants to grow or change and the other wants things to stay the same, the marriage starts to crack. Another reason many marriages fall apart after 60 is unresolved resentment. Over the years, couples build up a quiet pile of emotional debts, unspoken hurts, unmet needs, broken promises. Maybe he never listened. Maybe she never forgave. Maybe they stopped saying thank you. And after decades of pushing it aside, the pile gets too big to ignore. A famous study by Dr. John Gottman at the University of Washington showed that contempt, the sense of superiority, sarcasm, and disconnection, is the #1 predictor of divorce. And contempt builds slowly. It grows in silence, in the I'm fine moments, in the weeks without touch, in the years without real conversation. By the time couples reach 60 or 70, it can be too late to undo what's been festering for so long. But not all endings are rooted in pain. Some divorces happen because people grow. They wake up and realize they want something different. A new adventure, a new way of being. And though it's sad, it's also a kind of truth. According to Pew Research, one of the top reasons people over 60 end marriages is a desire for personal growth. That might sound surprising, but it's real. After a lifetime of taking care of others, many people want a chance to explore who they are now, and sometimes that journey doesn't include the person they married. There's also the question of health and energy. For some, Entering the later years sparks a kind of urgency. They think, if I've got 20 good years left, do I want to spend them in a marriage that doesn't bring me peace? That urgency can lead to tough choices. And while it may seem like the grass is greener, life after divorce at 60 isn't easy either. Financial security becomes fragile. Loneliness can grow. Adult children may feel confused or hurt. The emotional toll is deep. And yet for many, the pain of staying feels heavier than the fear of leaving. But it's not all about endings. There are couples who make it work, who fall in love again at 65, who rediscover each other in the quiet after retirement. These are the marriages that survive because they evolve. They talk. They forgive. They learn to love each other not as they were, but as they are now. And that's the heart of this conversation. Long marriages don't fail because people stop loving. They fail because people stop growing together. In this chapter of life, growth looks different. It's slower, deeper, more intentional, and it requires a kind of tenderness that many couples forget to give. So what can we do? First, we can talk about it. These are not just old people problems. These are life problems, human problems. And the more we understand why these marriages fall apart, the better chance we have at keeping them whole. Second, we can build awareness. If you're in your 40s or 50s now, this is the time to start planting seeds of connection, communication, and shared dreams. Don't wait until retirement to rediscover each other. And finally, if you're in your 60s or 70s and feeling the cracks in your marriage, know this. It's not too late. Healing is still possible. Growth is still possible. You're still possible. Sometimes all it takes is one honest conversation, one act of forgiveness, one shared moment to shift the path. And sometimes it takes more. Therapy, prayer, time apart. But whatever it is, don't give up on love. Don't give up on your story. And if divorce does happen, don't let shame write your ending. You are allowed to start again, to heal, to be whole. This chapter of life, your 60s, 70s, 80s, it's not the end. It's just a new beginning. And whether you walk it alone or with someone by your side, walk it in truth, in grace, and in the knowledge that you are not alone. These stories are happening everywhere, in small towns and big cities, behind picket fences and apartment doors. People are rediscovering themselves, rebuilding, reimagining what life can look like. We often assume that time builds love, that the longer a couple is together, the stronger their bond becomes. But the truth isn't always so simple. In part 2 of our look into why so many long marriages fall apart after 60, we go even deeper into what's really happening behind closed doors. One of the most powerful yet overlooked reasons is emotional neglect. Not the loud kind, but the quiet, slow drift where couples stop truly seeing one another. Over decades, many couples stop checking in, stop asking, "How are you really?" Life gets busy, especially with work, raising kids, aging parents, and financial stress. And somewhere in all that noise, emotional closeness fades. A couple might sit at the same dinner table every night but not really connect. That's what happened to Larry and Denise, married 38 years. They shared meals, went to church, even traveled together, but they were living parallel lives. "We loved each other," Denise said in an interview with Next Avenue, "but we didn't know each other anymore. And by the time we noticed, we didn't know how to come back." And that's the hard part. By the time you realize the distance, it can feel impossible to rebuild the bridge. Experts at the National Council on Aging say that lack of emotional intimacy is one of the leading causes of late-life divorce. It's not about drama or betrayal. It's about emptiness. Another factor that many people over 60 quietly struggle with is loneliness within the marriage itself. It might sound strange, but you can feel deeply lonely even when you're living with someone. This is especially true for women, who often spend their lives as caregivers, putting others first. And then one day they look up and realize they've been emotionally alone for years. They've been strong, selfless, and silent. But inside, they're tired. Tired of not being heard. Tired of not being seen. A 2022 study by the Institute for Family Studies found that many older women initiate divorce not out of anger, but from a place of emotional starvation. They aren't running away. They're reaching for a life where they can breathe. And sometimes, after years of trying, they realize they can't fix what their partner won't acknowledge. But it's not just women who feel this. Older men, too, face a deep loss of identity after retirement. And when that loss isn't talked about, it can harden into bitterness, silence, or withdrawal. Many men were raised not to show feelings, not to ask for help, not to admit they're struggling. And when they do, it often comes out as anger or disconnection. If couples don't learn to speak honestly, those emotions pile up like dust in a forgotten room. Until one day someone opens the window and decides to leave. There's also the unspoken burden of caregiving. When one partner becomes ill, physically or mentally, the marriage often shifts dramatically. Roles change. Resentment can creep in. One partner may feel guilt for wanting a break, while the other feels shame for needing care. It's a heartbreaking dynamic that takes a toll on intimacy and patience. According to the Family Caregiver Alliance, over 20% of divorces after age 60 are related to the emotional and physical strain of caregiving. These are not heartless people. They are exhausted souls doing their best. And when there's no outside support, even the most loving marriage can buckle under the weight. Add to this the financial pressure many couples face in retirement, when savings are tight, when medical bills pile up, when pensions don't stretch, and tension rises fast. Financial stress can magnify every crack in a relationship. Suddenly, old habits become battles. Different values around spending, saving, or helping adult children come to the surface. And instead of teamwork, there's blame. According to Fidelity's 2023 Couples and Money Study, over 45% of retired couples admit to arguing about money regularly, and for many, these arguments become the background noise of their lives. But perhaps the most painful truth is that many long marriages fall apart simply because they were never truly happy to begin with. They were held together by duty, by routine, by children. And when those reasons fade, the core of the relationship is revealed. Some couples realize they stayed together not because they were thriving, but because it was easier than leaving. And now, in their 60s or 70s, they ask themselves, what am I staying for? That question isn't born of selfishness. It's born of clarity. They don't want to waste whatever years they have left pretending. They want real love, real joy, or at the very least, real peace. And so they separate, not in anger, but in quiet resignation. In some cases, couples divorce and remain friends. They attend family gatherings, help each other through medical appointments, and find a new kind of companionship that no longer demands the title of marriage. That too is a kind of love, a mature love, one that accepts reality instead of forcing it to fit a mold. But for others, the break is clean, and the healing is hard. After decades together, divorce can feel like grief. There's the loss of a shared history, the sting of silence in a once familiar home, the pain of being single again after a lifetime of we. And there's the awkwardness of explaining it to adult children, to friends, to a community that doesn't always understand. But what many find, surprisingly, is that life doesn't end after divorce at 60. It begins again. It's different, yes, quieter, slower, but also full of potential. People find hobbies they forgot they loved. They make new friends. Some even find new partners, not to replace what was lost, but to create something new. And that's the message we want to share with you today. Whether your marriage has changed, ended, or is struggling, your life is not over. You are not alone, and you are not broken. This stage of life comes with hard truths, but also with deep freedom. It's a time to be honest, to be brave, and to seek what brings you peace. So take a breath, let go of shame, and know that whatever your story looks like, you are still worthy of love, joy, and connection. If this message resonated with you, if you felt seen, or if you know someone who needs to hear these words, we ask you to help grow the 60+ chapter community. Share this video, leave a comment, and subscribe so we can keep walking this journey together with truth, grace, and hope in every step.